So hi everyone, my name is Mia Reeves. I'm a CPA and I'm one of the managing partners of Francis and Reeves Advisory.
My name's Aaron Pursell, and I have a growth consulting business. So I help specifically in anything to do with getting people on from like their lead to close process. After talking to you and your partner Patra, it was actually something that I was kind of looking for. I'd previously had other CPAs or tax accountant people that I was working with, but it was never on the tax planning side. It was always just like at the end of the year when it came down to actually like getting ready to file, or at the beginning of the year, actually. Right. So it was nothing that ever had, I would say like the biggest thing is like having the intention behind it, right? Like as a business owner or as a 1099 or someone who's self-employed, it's something that you do want to be cognizant of about like throughout the year as opposed to just like when you have to file.
So
So
hi everyone, my name is Mia Reeves. I'm a CPA and I'm one of the managing partners of Francis and Reeves Advisory. And I'm sitting here with Aaron Pursell, and he is one of our favorite clients. And we have a very good story as of how we met and how he became my client. So can't wait to share with you guys. But the purpose of the podcast today is to talk more about his journey to entrepreneurship, and then also like some tax advice and just like his journey of how he started working with us and how things went. So I'm very excited to share this with you guys. So Aaron, I'm glad to sit with you here today and want to kind of introduce you to our audience. So can you tell people a little bit more about yourself and your business?
yeah, pleasure to be here and thank you for having me on. So yeah, my name's Aaron Purcell, and I have a growth consulting business. So I help specifically in anything to do with getting people on from like their lead to close process, right? So when it comes to marketing, obviously paid traffic, copywriting, positioning, messaging, offer creation. And then really my specialty really lies more on the actual sales process. So whether it's in the closing side of things or creating scripts, sales training for companies that have teams. And yeah, really anything from getting people into your funnel or your process all the way to the point where they convert and they're a paid client.
Yeah, it's awesome. Because I remember when we first met, you were really a very good salesperson. You
Thank
really
you.
sold me on the whole process and the products. But it just when you presented with me the offer, it was the whole discovery process. It was very helpful because I felt like throughout the closing process, it was like a 3 calls that we had together, I think. But I learned
Hmm.
a lot about just like the sales and marketing side of my business that you have taught me throughout the whole process. I haven't paid you. I learned a lot already, so it was really impressive. I was very impressed at your sales and marketing knowledge to even share with me. And the cool thing was you were not even an accountant, but from speaking with me, like you were able to give me very good advice on the sales and marketing side of an accounting firm. So that was really good to have that experience with you. And of course, I became the client, right? But like you can share that with the audience as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think kind of just piggybacking to what you're saying, anytime you're selling some sort of business, consulting or B2B offer, right? Like you're gonna kind of talk to a variety of different businesses, whether like for you guys, it's an accounting firm, you could be talking to someone who has some sort of like high ticket coaching offer, agency, or any type of like online service-based or product-based business. So I feel like what's really important is understanding, okay, you have these, general principles, but how can it apply specifically for other people's business models? Like, so for you guys in the accounting firm, obviously a lot of the examples that I wanted to use of how it would actually help you, out specifically with your business as opposed to, if you were in a different industry, right? So, but yeah, really at the end of the day, it all operates off of, one of my mentors kind of taught me was like off of the theory of constraints, right? It's kind of like I'm sure you've heard the term like no problem, no sale, right? So it's like you identify the problem and then you identify, okay, what's keeping this person or this company from achieving these goals? Then they're really digging into, marketing or sales and figuring out where those inefficiencies lie. and figuring out, okay, is this like a systems and process related problem, or is it a people related problem? And then just making sure that we have a good step-by-step system to be able to get you guys ultimately to your goal, which is for everybody is, scaling their business.
Awesome. So how did you get to, being so good at sales? Is that a talent or it's a learned process?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think a lot of people think that in order to be good at sales, like it's just like a natural like thing, like you either have it or you don't. And I would actually say it's quite the opposite. It is something that's like a developed and learned skill. Now, do people have maybe a little bit more of like a natural knack for it than others? 100%, right? Like there's, introverts and extroverts, but I think for me personally, my first sales position was when I was 18 or 19 years old. I was actually at a call center. I think that's where a lot of people that get into sales maybe originally start off is like, they start off at some sort of entry level job. So I was at a call center. I was making, you know, hundreds of dollars a day, and that really got me out of like my comfort zone, being able to talk to strangers, have conversations with people that I just met on the phone. And then that kind of ultimately led me into going into other several sales roles, and then that led me into actually owning my own company and offer. And I think that's where really it got refined. And then previous to me kind of going back and doing what I'm doing now with growth consulting, I had the pleasure of being able to work for, I would say arguably probably one of the best B2B sales consulting companies like out there, like in the high ticket online service-based business space. And that was really what I would say was like the pinnacle point for me that gave me a lot of the frameworks that I use today and just really gave me a lot of experience on being able to talk to, business owners like yourself and really being able to understand, okay, what is the problem that these companies are facing and what's the best way of being able to solve that problem. And yeah, overall it was a good experience, but it was just a lot of reps, right? Just a lot of practice and a lot of repetition on just different scenarios and different people that I had the pleasure of working with and talking to.
Got it. So it's more about, it's not a natural talent, but it's more about just like finding the right company to work for and then doing a lot of practicing, right? And then you've been in sales for like since there's more than 10 years now. So you have a lot of
Yeah.
experience as well. Um, so so maybe tell people a little bit about how you became our clients.
Yeah. So oddly enough, kind of like what you mentioned earlier, you had came onto a sales call with me, and we were talking about different ways as to how, the company that I was working for could obviously fit in to help you guys grow and scale based on like the goals that you had told me. And yeah, it was one of those things where after talking to you and your partner Patra, it was actually something that I was kind of looking for. I had previously had other CPAs or tax accountant people that I was working with, but it was never on the tax planning side. It was always just like at the end of the year when it came down to actually like getting ready to file, or at the beginning of the year actually, right? So it was nothing that ever had I would say like the biggest thing is like having the intention behind it, right? Like as a business owner or as a 1099 or someone who's self-employed, it's something that you do want to be cognizant of about like throughout the year as opposed to just like when you have to file. So that was something that I was looking for. And after talking to you guys for, two or three times on our sales calls, then I was like, okay, this could be a good opportunity for me to learn more about what I need to do to reduce tax liability, being able to keep more of my cash flow that I have versus just, you know, um, giving it up to Uncle Sam unnecessarily if I don't have to, right? So I think that just led to me being on a sales call with you, kind of like the reverse role, you going through your process and your demonstration, and then understanding, okay, there's actually a lot of value here, and this is something that I actually need.
Awesome. Well, thank you for hopping on the sales call with me and doing the reverse process. And I really enjoying, speaking with you as well about our product. And since you've worked with us since then, since last year, would you mind sharing with the audience what you have learned and just like the results of what we've done and how did that affect you and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing was just being more, I would say, to make it simple, just to be more organized, right? Like I think a lot of other business owners like myself, you're so wrapped up like in the day to day of just like what you need to do with your business, growing, scaling, making revenue, but you kind of fail to realize that there's things that you could be again intentional about or cognizant about during the process that will help you reduce your tax liability at the end of the calendar year. So for me specifically, working with you guys, it's just highlighted a lot of things that like I just didn't know I didn't know, right? And I think that's the biggest thing for um, anyone in business, especially when it comes to taxes and accounting. It's like it's not something that you're really taught much of. It's kind of like self-taught. And unfortunately, a lot of those lessons that you learn come the hard way, right? When you realize, okay, I'm spending more money than I need to, or I'm giving more back in taxes than I need to, and it's just because you weren't aware. So I think the biggest thing that I got was just like the awareness of just understanding, okay, there are different strategies that high level, high net worth people are using in order to minimize their tax liability, and then understanding those strategies and then just making sure that you're implementing them throughout the year as opposed to being reactive. It's basically like more of like a proactive versus reactive approach.
True, being proactive, being organized, and then also being aware. So those are the things
Mm.
that throughout the whole process that we're working together on to help you improve. But I really appreciate your open-mindedness and being able, like, and you're, because as business owners, we don't like to do admin stuff that much, especially the accounting, the
Yeah.
finance. Admin, it's like the last thing in the bucket list, in the list of things to do. I know if you've been working really hard on getting those items to us, and whatever we tell you to do, you are actually you're on top of it and implementing it. It says a lot about your drive to just make things better. I know that we haven't filed your taxes for you, and this is our first year working together, but you've seen the tax plan. So by the time you actually see your tax return, you're going to be very happy because your tax is going to be a lot less
Yes.
than the previous year. So
Exactly.
like to maybe later on show you the savings in the actual tax return. And then so how do you, I know that now that you are actually in the business, and previously in the past you work on different sales roles and now you're having your own business, is there any advice you would like to share with people who also want to start their own business, but then maybe they're scared, and any tips for young entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah. It's tough because there's a lot of different things, right? But I would say, at least for myself, the biggest thing that I had to learn was just like focusing on one thing. I think like when you first come into entrepreneurship, it's like a blue ocean. There's so many different things that you could be doing. You could solve this problem, you can do this for this person. And, it's kind of like just figuring out, okay, what's the one thing that I can be a specialist in? And how can I attach that specialty to something where I can be compensated in like a high ticket, right? Like anytime anyone wants to solve any problem, they're going to work with like a specialist to solve that problem, not a generalist, right? That's why, like, for your guys' business model, it's like why I'm working with your firm versus just using like TurboTax or something. Like, that's not even going to actually help me, right? And it's the same thing with any other type of offer or service that you're providing. So if there's one thing that I would advise is to figure out, okay, what's the main problem that I can solve, and who's the one person that I could solve it for, and how do I really create my uniqueness in being able to solve that problem in a very efficient and profitable way. And then at that point, then you can specialize in that one thing, and you can attach a higher price point to being able to um, solve that problem. Essentially, I think the biggest thing is just not doing too many things at once, right? It's kind of like the shiny object syndrome of like, okay, I'm going to dive into this. It's been a couple weeks. This isn't working out. Let me look at this. And then all of a sudden now you're, doing 4 or 5 different things that like you're not great at either of them. You're just like average, and it's like, and that's how people I think either burn out or just don't see the success that they're looking for. So just being specific is the biggest thing.
It's true. So being specific on that one thing that you could be the master at, and like providing values to that client's need. So I like that. It's just like really hyper focus on the one strength, the one product. And then really,
Yeah. And that's what I've always struggled with personally. It's kind of like, I'm sure you've heard the term. It's like, jack of all trades, but master of none.
Mhm.
And I do feel like being the master of one is better than like just being good at everything. It's like you want to be the expert at one thing as opposed to being like, I can do this and this, this and this and this. And it's like, it's tough from a fulfillment perspective, from a focus perspective, from a marketing perspective to market yourself that way. So again, people do want to work with specialists and experts, and you want to make sure you're highlighting yourself in that way too.
It's true. So now become the expert at sales, and that's what you're going to help people with organizing, helping organizations with, right? So That's really good. Now, how do you, still applying that to your organizational skill in your personal life, let's say, when it comes to tax, and in the past, maybe you were not aware of having to organize receipts and keep track of mileage and do certain things to reduce more on your taxes, right? But now you are aware of them. So what are some of the systems that you've had in place to kind of build this routine to be more intentional about your accounting and finances?
Yeah, yeah. I think the first thing comes down to like awareness, right? If you don't know what you don't know, then there's no way you're going to be able to implement it. So number one, it's like being aware. And the second thing is being intentional. So for now, what I've been more just consistent of practicing is just doing kind of like a weekly and monthly audit, right? And just actually like sitting down, taking the time to do the accounting. I think that's the biggest thing. Is like, yeah, it is a very monotonous task. There's times where I'm like, okay, I could be doing other things that's gonna like drive the needle forward with my business or what have you. But at the end of the day, taxes are one of the biggest expenses that anyone spends in their lifetime, whether they're a business owner or they're not. So it is very important. And just understanding that, the more that you kind of keep your thumb on things like this, the better chance you're going to have of being able to be aware of where you're at cash flow wise from just like a business health perspective. But then also being able to understand, okay, there are different things that I can do to mitigate my tax, liabilities at the end of the year. And again, it's just about being intentional and being proactive versus reactive. I'll just kind of keep coming back to that. It's the biggest thing, is just having more of a proactive mindset about it versus waiting till January and then having to go through your whole last calendar year to be able to figure out what actually happened in the business.
That's a very good shift in mindset, because when I first spoke with you, you did wait until year end to go through your returns, and
Mm-hmm.
also because back then you were not, really fully into having your own business. So now I could see
Correct.
that your own business, you're a lot more intentional about uh, and proactive too about your finances and your taxes and your accounting. You have things in order, so that's a really good transition. I've
Yeah.
always told entrepreneurs that if you can look at your finances on a weekly basis, so you're doing great on that, finances, cash flow, P&L, balance sheet, I look at them on a weekly basis. If not monthly, but at the minimum quarterly, because if you wait until year end, then it's too late to do anything. And a lot of the strategies that
Yeah.
we're using for tax planning, they have to be used throughout the year. So, because you remember last year when we first got together, it was almost like I think Q3 or Q4. And so the strategies available for
Mm-hmm.
you are not as many as if you are proactive.
Yes.
Starting this year is going to be great, because
Yeah.
we're starting fresh this year. So
Exactly.
yeah. So in terms of like the accounting and the finances, right? You mentioned the P&L, balance sheet, the cash flow statement, all those things. Did you already know, or looking at the finances, did you already know about these terms and like this language, or you knew a little bit, but like not in depth? And would you like to learn more in depth about this concept?
Yeah, I would say in terms of like the basic, accounting, yes. Was it something that I was actively practicing? No. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing. It's like, sure there's things that you do know that you should be doing on like a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, but it's like, are you actually doing it? So for me, it was just again creating that awareness and then just being more intentional about, okay, like, at the end of every week on Sunday, or at least at the end of every month, I'm going to go back, I'm going to review my finances, go through each thing line by line, allocate those into different categories, and then really being able to figure out, where I'm at. So although I knew those things before, I think what I got from you guys was more like the system and process of like actually how to implement it, and
Mhm.
then that allowed me to create a little bit more structure around myself just to be more consistent.
Yeah, it's true. And even if maybe if you know what they are, but you don't know how to read them correctly, or if you know how to read them
Yeah,
correctly,
there you go.
the other side of it, like what is more to it. So we are more than happy to
Yeah,
teach you as much as you want to learn, because in my belief is accounting, finance, even though they might sound a little bit boring, but they're the foundation to having a successful business, because all the successful business owners, they really know the details of their finances. And so
absolutely.
is good that we should know. And at least later on, if you do not want to do a lot of the tracking yourself, you could hire someone. But just to know it now, it makes it a lot easier to double check other people's work too in the future.
Absolutely.
And then how do people reach out to you? Because now we know you're the master of sales and you're really able to just focus on helping people build the sales team and the sales, I guess the sales, train salespeople for different organizations, right? How do people
Mhm.
talk to you if someone wants a sales manager for their team, or a consultant for their team, or just want to learn more about sales? How do they reach out to you?
Yeah. Yeah. The best way would just be to call or text me. My number, I'll just give it right now. It's 858-695-4426. That is my direct line, and you can just reach out to me directly.
Okay, awesome. And any last words of wisdom or advice or anything like that for people who are listening, about anything that we've discussed early on today?
Yeah, I would say kind of like the key points, is just number one, you got to create the awareness. You got to understand, number one, like what this even is in the first place to have a better idea of how to then be intentional and then being proactive, right? So I think the biggest thing is the biggest shift for me was, you know, tax planning versus tax preparation, right? And maybe I'm not using the right words here in terms of accounting, but it's just again being proactive instead of reactive. I think a lot of business owners are so focused on the day-to-day aspect of like their business and scaling and sales, conversions, marketing, fulfillment, all that. That I think some of this kind of goes to the wayside in terms of the priority level, and it's kind of about reshifting the prioritization of like, okay, this should be just as important as anything else, and then also, at least for myself, like putting it on the calendar as something that I'm gonna like be visiting on a weekly, monthly basis, so that way I just have, my thumb on the pulse there, as opposed to going into Q4 wondering, okay, what can I do now to retroactively make up for what I did over that full calendar year, and now just having more of a game